My name is April Morrison, and I am the Executive Director of Yoga Buzz. I just wanted to thank the Yoga and Body Image Coalition. I'm representing your gear today for letting us use your platform to talk about what different yogis look like. So today I am here with my wonderful friend Dan Stewart. Dan and I actually went through yoga teacher training together. So we're both yoga teachers out of the Yoga Buzz School of Education. Welcome, Dan. So what I'm going to do today is just start out kind of non-traditionally for yoga as self-identifying. So I identify as a white, cisgender, queer woman. And I use the she, her pronouns. Dan, how do you identify?
Hi everyone, my name is Dan. I identify as a Latino, transgender, queer man. And my pronouns are he and him. For those who don't know what transgender means or cisgender means, transgender means that for my particular experience, the way I identify did not match up with my sex assigned at birth, which was female. I saw myself and see myself as a man. The word that April used, cisgender, refers to someone who has that alignment with their sex assigned at birth and gender identity.
Yep. So it's pretty simple and super complex altogether, because that's kind of how we roll, you know.
Yeah, as is yoga, right?
Right, exactly.
Full circle.
So you may be asking, like, wait a minute, I thought I just turned on to a yoga video. Why are we just having a gender and sexuality class in college? But the title of our little presentation today is Queer and Trans Yogis and Why Representation Matters. So that's kind of why we're talking about it, just to give you another glimpse into just another layer of this is what a yogi looks like. So let's kind of get back to basics. And Dan, how about you just tell us about your yoga experience? How did you get into yoga? What does yoga do for you?
So I think I started in like a Y class that my mom took me to because she thought I needed to de-stress. I don't know if yoga has helped with that per se. It's definitely helped with managing that stress. The stress is still there. But it really wasn't until maybe 4 or 5 years ago that I started to spend some time with the practice and really begin to understand what was the benefit of it for me. It really was difficult at first when I was trying to understand my identity better prior to transitioning, knowing that something was up and going into these yoga spaces that are particularly female dominated. There's a lot of gendered language focusing on your femininity and you know, going to some classes where there was a focus on, you know, your hips and all these sort of things that as a transgender individual can be really triggering. It could be really disheartening to go into a space to be vulnerable, to open yourself up to yoga and the experience of being present to your body. But I felt called to come back even when, you know, class wasn't perfect, or even when it was hard for me personally to be present in my body. I think it really was an affirming experience, especially going through yoga teacher training when I was able to learn really what yoga can be and how to create this environment that's for everyone, especially for members of my own community.
Do you think that that's kind of what drew you to becoming a yoga teacher, or did you just want to strengthen your practice, or did you feel it's underrepresented in the yoga community?
I think it's a little of all those things. For me personally, I knew I wanted to take the next step in kind of deepening my practice, having a better understanding, but also really knew the benefit for myself and wanting to share that with my community in terms of, you know, not just the meditative aspect of it, but really actually seeing the benefit of the asana, the physical practice, and what that means to then appreciate your body when you might struggle with that. You know, as a trans person, a lot of my energy prior to transitioning or, you know, pre-hormones or surgery or anything like that was focused in on what can I do to be seen as how I want to be seen. And really putting that on other people to affirm me, while yoga kind of called me in to be present to myself, to see like the beauty and the work that I would do towards, working towards these physical poses and recognizing the strength that I had that then could translate into kind of strength in everyday life of kind of navigating the world as a queer and trans person.
I love him. Okay, so we're talking like this. Like, obviously, I'm not going to walk into a studio and be like, "Hi, I'm April. I'm a fat white lesbian." It's not going to be like that. But, like, why does representation, especially in a studio setting, why does that matter?
I think, we're all trying to make yoga more accessible to folks. And there's a complicated history why that may be that some individuals don't feel welcomed and some individuals do. I think representation matters because it is a way to reflect as a studio, reflect as an individual that is, part of an organization, that you want to acknowledge people's existence. And by having representation, by having a queer or trans teacher who's out and available for questions, available for the community, it then can empower those that didn't feel comfortable approaching in the first place. That, okay, I know you, okay, I know that we've had similar experiences. If you can find benefit in this when my past experiences have, torn me away from the practice, what did you do so I can get where you are in terms of comfort level, and what can I advocate for in my other yoga classes to make me feel more comfortable?
So much to think about. And I feel like I look at it from a yoga teacher perspective. I would be just as if someone differently able than me comes in, and you get that moment of, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Yeah. And I always say, recognize it and embrace it, and then just try. There is no right or wrong or perfect way to do anything, but as long as you're willing to be open, welcoming, inclusive, and just try, that's the key to it.
Yeah. Just as a note on that, I think, as humans, in order to grow, in order to connect with one another, we have to sit in that discomfort of not understanding, of feeling inadequate. I mean, even personally, though I identify as trans, teaching a class, I may say something that may not resonate with someone, or even though I share the same experience and a similar identity with the folks that I may be teaching, doesn't mean that I'm going to have it perfect. Just like any of us, it's a matter of kind of taking that step, just like you said, and recognizing, what, we're going to learn together in this. I'm going to do the best I can to be prepared, but giving yourself some slack and being real about it, because I think that's important. Than putting on an air that you are this perfect human that knows every sort of modification or way to
other than us.
I mean, obviously we're experts, otherwise we wouldn't be doing this.
Right.
Exactly.
So for me, I think that on a personal level, as somebody walking into a studio, I know there's a couple things that I find, you were just talking about gender language. One thing that I could think of off the top of my head is walking into a studio, and I had gone to a class, and a teacher was like, "Okay, ladies, I know you and your husband and blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, I had a little, what? I could not identify, and then my, you know me, so my I'm like,
I'm done.
Right, out.
I already paid my money, I guess I'll just,
right.
be here.
Right. But, instead, that is, so minor, and so, I'm sure the instructor, their intent was not to insult anyone in the room.
But it's still, hurts.
So what would you say are kind of, and you kind of already touched on it, but common?
I think, that making assumptions, really. It's kind of challenging the assumptions that everyone that comes into your space is straight, everyone that comes into your space is cis or not transgender. The assumption that you can tell when someone comes in. I've been in scenarios where prior in my transition, where I had even started taking hormones, but second puberty, it takes a while to take. Being in a class where ladies was used, and as a trans person, being misgendered can be soul crushing. I mean, it really hurts. And so you want to create an inclusive, open environment, and so it's challenging those assumptions. Okay. in what way am I using language that assumes the identity of my students? And I've seen that kind of play out both in a positive way and play out in kind of a more problematic way.
Yeah.
And really, I think in terms of like practicality, in terms of, just studio spaces in general, for some people, especially those that identify as non-binary, so may not identify as female or male, somewhere outside of that spectrum, going to the bathroom is a stress and a hassle. I mean, as a trans person, it's still a stress and a hassle, even though I have passing privilege. And so even something as simple as making one of the restrooms gender neutral can be so meaningful for not just trans people, but for people who, need that private space or anything of that sort.
Right. So thinking of advice, you as an individual walking into a studio, so you as a student, do you have any advice for people who may feel apprehensive about going to a traditional studio? What advice would you give them?
I think when approaching any sort of situation as a queer and trans person, I think we often rely on community recommendations or suggestions. So listening to those around you that you trust, or people that may be connected to a studio. And also when you are in that space, if you feel comfortable enough doing it after the fact, to advocate for yourself, which of course is much more difficult than just saying that, but recognize that as a queer trans human, you have every right to be in that space. You have every right to find benefit in the practice and ask for what you need. And I think often the studio environment may not seem like that's capable. I've been to some classes where obviously everyone is super regular there, and you come in and you're like the new kid on the block, and everyone's quickly going through all the poses, and I'm just like, where are we? And what day is it, and what year is it? I have no idea. All disoriented sort of thing. And so, creating an inclusive environment, and really making sure that as a student that you also take care of yourself. So if you're in a space that is just not working for you, recognizing that as hard as it may be, you have every right to leave.
Oh, right.
And that sends a clear message. Right?
Giving yourself and I think I spoke about that if you guys had watched my video a couple weeks ago. I have left many studios because I feel like that is the best form of self-care. Like if I'm in an environment that's making me feel anxious, like that kind of defeats the entire purpose of going to yoga. So the safest thing for me to do is get out of there. So I did. And just allowing yourself that permission without any guilt or shame or whatever.
And that's a hard place to get to. I mean,
it is.
I struggle with that. Just because I struggle with anxiety. It's just my thing. But, don't be afraid to make others uncomfortable if that's what you need. I mean, as a yoga teacher on the other side, like our goal is to meet our students where they're at, right? Like our purpose is to guide them through the practice in a way that's meaningful for them. So I want to know when I mess up. And it's, I guess, kind of switching over to what can teachers do. Yeah. I think it's creating that opening environment, checking that gendered language. If there's someone that that identifies as non-binary or trans that comes into your class, making sure that you take that extra step to let them know that you see them. Or if someone, as you would with any student, if they're struggling or you can tell that something's just not jiving with them, checking in afterwards just to see, is there anything I can do to make this a better experience for you next time? I'd really love for you to keep coming. And it's that personal touch of, again, we're all humans trying to seek some sort of happiness and authenticity and connection with ourselves, and yoga is a great way to do that, and it's, if we can just help each other get there.
I think for me, one thing you touched on earlier is assumptions. So my advice to teachers would be there's a reason it's called self-identifying. Like it is not your job as the teacher to identify all of your students. Like that's their thing if they choose to share, but your job is just to make it as welcoming as possible. And just, sometimes taking that initiative to, you see a new student. Hey, my name is, Dan. It's so nice to see you. I've never seen you before. What's your name? What pronouns do you use? And I think some people get uncomfortable with the idea of, do I just ask?
But yeah, just ask, because I'd rather you get them right than not, and totally shut down then as the response.
Right. So, last question that we like to ask everyone. We have a wonderful outreach director, Brittany, and she always asks people, what's your jam? So for me, my jam is adaptive and chair yoga, and yoga for LGBT community and yoga for larger bodies. So what is your jam? What do you like to do with your yoga?
I got lots of jams. So it's kind of, I guess, two really important ones for me. I mean, why I got into yoga teacher training and really wanting to bring that practice to others is creating an inclusive space for trans folks, really. Creating a space where people who aren't able to be themselves outside can come into a space, dress in a gender-affirming way, be referred to as they wish to be affirmed as, and have a safer space where they can be around other people where your trans body is normalized. Because often that's not the case. And then another hat that I wear, so I am a gerontologist, so aging specialist or what have you, and I do a lot of work doing chair yoga with individuals with dementia, and that's been really a really gift of an experience. And I think for both populations, though they can be very different, what drew me to yoga was to help others find some sort of connection with their body, with themselves. And it is like really beautiful to be able to see that from a variety of people, even people that are experiencing dementia, of being able to have that connection, even if it's something as simple as a deep breath. So really, I mean, those are the two populations I work with, but it's really kind of with this overall mission of helping folks be them.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so we've answered all of the questions I'm sure that you have. Well, probably not. So if you have questions, feel free to put them on the video here and we'll answer them for you. Or you can contact us at yogabuzz.org and check us all out. We will be back. This is kind of an ongoing series that Yoga and Body Image Coalition is doing with us. So this is, I kind of call it our Mr. Rogers, like we're introducing you to the people in our neighborhood, the people in our yoga family, and I'm very honored to have Dan as part of my yoga family. So I feel like the best part of inclusivity is to pass the mic to people so that they can share their experiences. So I am grateful to pass the mic to Dan today so he can talk about his life and his world experiences. And so Dan, in upcoming weeks, is going to pass the mic to someone else and have another wonderful conversation. So if there's a particular thing that you would love to see one of us in the Yoga Buzz family talk about, please contact us too, and we can talk about that too.
Comment below.
Comment below.
Wherever this is.
Right? Somewhere there. And thank you all for visiting with us today. We'll see you again soon.
Bye, y'all.